Hi, I'm Sophie Wilson, and this is People of the Pool, where we have conversations with those making a positive change in Liverpool's business community. We're known for our music, for our culture, tourism, and of course, football. But what's caught my eye since moving back from down south is the innovation and entrepreneurship that's happening in the city region. And this podcast is about championing just that. I'm blue, not red. I don't have a purple wheelie bin, but I'm still a proud Scouser, and I can't wait to share the stories of positive, inspirational changemakers with me. In this episode of People of the Pool, we meet Nannette Mellor, CEO of the Brain Charity, which offers emotional support, practical help, and social activities to anyone with a neurological condition. Nannette, welcome to People of the Pool.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. So you've dedicated your career to supporting neurodivergent and disabled people. What first inspired you to get into this line of work?
I suppose if I'm brutally honest, it's for me, it's about feeling a bit like an outsider. And I always felt a little bit like an outsider. So I was a really fat kid when I was at school. And that was before being fat was very trendy like it is now. And there was no fat kids in the school, really. So I was one of those children that was, the last to be picked in PE.
Yeah.
I never got bullied because I was always quite a confident person, but I was definitely one of the outsiders. And so my crew, if you like, at school, it was me, it was the black kid, the gay kid, the poor kid, the kid with a mental health issue. That was my team, if you like. And so I've always felt like an outsider, and I took upon it, I took the role of school police officer in the yard, and I did that from a very young age. And I think I'm as much driven by anger at people who pick on other people that they see as having a weakness or a vulnerability. I'm as much driven by anger, about those people as I am about, wanting to look after those that are vulnerable, I think. So, I'd love to sit here and say it's because I'm a really lovely, caring person, but I am somebody who gets very, very angry and upset with those around me that I feel like are taking advantage of other people.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, one of the things that spurred me on to want to do what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you get into it?
Gosh, well, I have an auntie with a learning disability, Auntie Sylvia. And so I was always used to being around people who were a bit different and felt very comfortable around people who are a bit different. And when I was at university and I was studying a few different topics, because I love lots of different things, but I was studying psychology, and particularly biological psychology is the bit I'm really interested in. I took up work as a care assistant for people with a learning disability. And I did that because I could fit the shifts in the care homes around my studies. Mm-hmm. So they'd phone up and they'd go, do you want a Saturday night shift or whatever? And I'd go and work in these care homes. And I just really loved it. I loved having responsibility for human beings. And I know people, when people think about care work, they think about it in really, in a really negative way, and in a really kind of, it's a really rubbish job. It's a really hard job, actually. And you are responsible for the welfare of other people. And so to me, that was much more important than being in charge of making tellies or, filling boxes up with soaps or something like that. I couldn't, I never wanted to work in the kind of environment where I was making money for people. That's not what drives me. I'm not interested in money. Never have been. I just wanted to do something I enjoyed, and I really enjoyed it. So I stuck with it and went into management of care homes and then management of day services and rehab services and just kind of worked my way up really and into different roles. And ended up, before I came to the Brain Charity, working for the National MenCap Society or Royal MenCap as a campaigner and fighting for money into the system, changes to legislation, that sort of thing. So I've just always done it and I've always loved it.
So let's talk a little bit about neurodiversity. Because
Yes.
obviously the Brain Charity is offering help and support to those with neurological conditions. What do you wish people knew about neurodiversity?
I think when we talk about neurodiversity now, what we're describing is a real shift in public perception of people with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia. So we're not talking about all of the different things that can happen with the brain. We're talking about conditions or differences that an individual is born with. And what we're saying to the world is that the reason we assume somebody with autism or somebody with dyslexia, the reason we assume they need help, the reason we assume they have a deficit is because our perception and our conversations about those people are based on what we call the medical model, not the social model. So if I wind back a little bit, if we take ADHD, for instance, if we had a tribe way back when where everybody was neurotypical, so there was nobody in there with ADHD or autism or whatever, if our tribe was just full of people with this kind of regular kind of brain, that tribe would probably die relatively quickly. Someone with ADHD is born with a natural impulse to experiment, to try new things. They're full of energy. They are the one in the tribe that will say, yeah, okay, we've managed to catch one fish out of this pond, and we get one fish out of this pond every day, and that's great. But they'll get bored doing that. And what they'll do is they'll go off and have a look at the next pond. Yeah. And they'll be the one in the tribe that finds a better place to fish. They'll find a better place to live. And they are the people in our tribe and our society who push us forward. They are full of innovation and experimentation. If we take people with autism, for instance, at the moment, when we hear the word autism, we think disability. And there are a certain number of people with autism who have a disability. They have a very severe form of autism, and it's really debilitating. But there are also people amongst us, loads of people walking around who are on the spectrum, and loads of them who are incredibly successful. And you've only got to look at Silicon Valley to see that.
Yeah.
And dyslexia is another one. So dyslexia, and I have dyslexia, is perceived to be a deficit, perceived to be a problem that I have. And for many, many years, I looked at it like that as well. But what science is telling us now, and what the reality is that a lot of people with dyslexia become extremely successful in business and in the arts and in science, and it's because we think in a very different way. Yep. So I think the thing that we are helping people to recognise and realise is that there are different types of brain in the world, and that's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing. It's necessary, important, and it's just the same as having a group of people with different skin tones. It's a natural variation. And actually, it's, if you're a business person, it's a really good idea to surround yourself with people who have these different types of brains, because then you've got more tools in your box. You've got all these different perceptions that will help you solve problems. And that's that's the reality. And I think we're getting there now. People are starting to get their head around it. It's a massive paradigm shift for everybody, but it's happening and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I love the way you've explained that. And I have a number of very good friends who are dyslexic, exceptional in business. A very different way of thinking, and one of them's has got synesthesia, so they can smell colour and taste shapes and all, amazing things. So
Steve Jobs, dyslexic.
Yeah.
Richard Branson, dyslexic. I heard Kath Kitson talking on the radio at the weekend.
Radio 4?
Yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, I mean, if you just look at business, so Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Bill Gates, all the big players, they're all neurodivergent, every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's a little bit nervous about it because we don't want to fall into the the problem of stereotypes. And of course, when it comes to autism, the only thing anyone knew about autism for about 30 years was Rain Man. And if you were to say so and so's got autism, the assumption was that they would have this amazing talent to play poker, which isn't true. But there is something going on there.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So this particular series of People of the Pool is all about community builders. Talk to me about the Brain Charity and how you are building a community of neurodivergent people in Liverpool and beyond.
So the Brain Charity was originally called Neuro Support when I took it on. And what it does, this, beautiful charity, is it helps people out. And when I say the word help, I mean that in a very real sense. It's practical, filling forms in, going around your house, making sure you've got food in the fridge, all of that really, really practical hands-on help. It does that, and it does that for very, very vulnerable people. It does that for families who've, struggling to cope with dementia, or with, the chap who's a bus driver and he's just had a stroke and he's never going to be able to drive a bus again, and he's just lost his house because the mortgage company doesn't care about his stroke. And because he's lost his house, his whole family's falling apart. And, that kind of story is so common. And the charity reaches out to people like that and says, okay, let's see what we can do for you. And I think it's always had that. And that's really what I found when I went there. And that's the bit I've protected. And what we've done is we've really started to celebrate that and shout about it. And I think that was all that was missing, really, was the confidence to tell the world to look in this direction and support what's going on here, because it's amazing. And I could see it. And I think because I was an outsider coming into it, I could see it a mile off. But I think the people within the charity, the volunteers, the staff, I think you're so embroiled in it, you don't really look at the big picture stuff. But, there are so many other organisations out there who don't do the kind of thing that charity does. But because it's things like, sorting your dog out, if you've just woken up in the hospital and you're worried about who's fed your dog, we go around and sort the dog, make sure it's been fed and everything. That there's so few charities that just get on with it. It's wonderful. I love the place.
I think more than that though, that's key, right? So that's the bottom Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah.
Get the dog fed, get the food in the fridge. But something that's maybe moving up that is, and a sense that I get from the Brain Charity is that you provide a space where everybody feels included and people feel, people who may in other circumstances not feel completely comfortable, that they can be themselves. That was one of your ladies, I can't remember her name, but on one of your videos I saw she said, I can be me here, and I'm just me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so unique, creating that space, that where people can come. There was a chap who'd never had a birthday card, I think, in his life, and now he's so there's some wonderful stories coming out of people who've, because I suppose there's one thing being born with a neurodivergency, if that's the
I'm figuring out the language as well. I think divergency is a thing. I haven't looked it up yet, but a difference. Being born different.
But then you've also got changes that could happen to any of us at any time. And I shared with you a little bit of my experience with long COVID when I had a neurological condition for a couple of years. And it was to be in a very strange and scary place when you're used to being able to speak and say the words that you want to say, and then suddenly you can't say that. And it's very isolating and very scary.
And very traumatic, I would say. It would be traumatic for anybody that. And I mean, most of us came out of COVID psychologically damaged by it. To think that we didn't is nonsense. there's some really interesting experiments that happened in psychology and, many years ago, and they would never happen today because they were, performed on animals, which is horrific. But what those experiments tell us is that social contact with others is the most important thing to us as human beings. It's more important even than food. And so in COVID, we all got damaged by what happened. And of course, there was another group of people like yourselves who got really, really, kicked in the teeth by it, had everything taken away from them. Of course, many, many thousands of people died as well. And, and I think looking back at that time, I don't feel really, as a society, we have dealt with it yet. I really feel like I need some kind of Memorial Day or something so I can put a lid on it, because every time I think about it, it sends shivers down my spine. It was bloody horrible, wasn't it?
There's like a kind of collective amnesia that we've all bought into because everyone was so desperate to get back. But it's there.
Yes.
It's sitting there.
Yeah.
Most people can't even remember. There's a period in time where people can't calibrate their brains around dates because we've kind of wiped it.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Pulled a mask out my pocket of a coat I hadn't worn for ages the other day, and I just hated it. I hated it. And I was like, I'm just shoving this straight back in it. I don't want to look at it. But it's the brain charity, getting back to your question, I think what you've described, that place where you can come and be yourself, and it doesn't matter if you can't speak, and it doesn't matter if you look different. That's because I like to think that's my crew, that's my gang, that's who I feel comfortable with. I don't want to be with a load of people who are perfect. I don't like those kind of people. I don't get on with them. I like people who have been through it. I like people who have battled. I like people who have been challenged because they are more caring, they're more open-minded, they're non-judgmental. And that's my gang. And that's why that building's full of people like that. And I'm really proud of that. Most of the staff that work at the Brain Charity fall into that category. We have many neurodivergent staff members who we have picked on purpose because not only are they talented, but they also get it because they've, been bullied at school, or they've lost someone they love, or, they've had to deal with a really bad period of mental illness or whatever. They're the nice people, they're the good people in life.
We've created People of the Pool podcast with the support of the team at Bengo Media. Dozens of businesses, large and small, turn to Bengo Media to get their podcasts up and running through their training, consultancy, and even hands-on production. And right now, Bengo Media is offering you, People of the Pool listeners, free online training to help get your podcast launched in 90 days. You'll get insight into the steps to take and some of the biggest mistakes to avoid. So, to claim your free online podcast training from Bengo Media, go to podcastschools.com now. That's podcastschools.com. So how long have you been at the Brain Charity now?
9 years.
What are you most proud of?
This changes every time somebody asks me. What am I most proud of? I think it sounds odd, but it's the fact that we earn a lot of our money now through business activity. And it was something I didn't know I could do until I got there and started tinkering around with things and experimenting with things. We bring money in essentially out of the pockets of the private sector and put it into the third sector. So we deliver services that would ordinarily be delivered by private sector companies. So we are competing with them for the pounds in people's pockets. We get sponsorship from private organisations that would perhaps be paying a different kind of organisation. So we are probably bringing in total this year about £700,000, and we're taking that money out of the private sector and we're putting it into the Brain Charity and we're spending it on our service users. And I think that's the thing I'm proudest of. It's being able to say, I know how to do business. I've always felt confident that I can do care work and that, I fit in very well in the voluntary sector, but feeling like I can stand up at a business conference and say, I can do this as well. That's the thing I'm most proud of, I think.
Excellent. Well, it's been a phenomenal achievement. How many now? More than 50 staff? And
60 something today, I think now. Yeah, wow. It's gone up just recently. Yeah. It's quite scary now. It's quite scary. Yeah.
And why? So you're a nationwide charity.
Yes.
But based in Liverpool.
Yeah.
Why Liverpool? Why is it a good home for you?
It was born here. This charity was born here. And I think it was born here because the focus of the charity was about bringing people together and about helping each other. And I think there's a really, really strong can-do attitude in Liverpool. I'm from Crewe up the road, which is nowhere near as glamorous as Liverpool. And Liverpool, to me, feels like its own ecosystem. It feels like it's got everything that everywhere else has got, but it's accessible and you are welcomed. I mean, I'd only been in Liverpool probably about 4 months, and I'd been in pretty much every big building in the city. I'd been invited in, come into the town hall, come into the Cunard building. It's owned. This city is owned by its people, and because of that, I feel like I've got lots more. I've got a lot more I can lay my hands on to help me achieve what I want to achieve. And I think an awful lot of other charities would do well to base themselves here. And I think they will. There's more and more moving out of some of the big cities now because of rents, but also because, the calibre of people here are fantastic. And there's that can-do attitude. We'll fix it. We're not looking to anywhere else to sort it out. We can do it here ourselves, and I love that about the place.
Yeah, it's a special place, isn't it? And like you say, really special people. Any sort of thoughts about the vision for the future? And obviously, 9 years now, 60 staff, engage, sort of self-funding in a way, being self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Educating more businesses about the benefits of having a neurodiverse employee base.
Yeah.
Where to next for the Brain Charity?
I absolutely love technology. That whole virtual reality space is really fascinating. There's some wonderful research which, is evidencing the fact that you can change people's points of view, people's memories, people's anxieties. You can change people's psychology by putting them through exercises, putting them into environments in a virtual world. And a really good example of this is that a really straightforward one is somebody with agoraphobia or somebody with arachnophobia. So if you sit somebody down with a real spider in their hand, kind of exposure therapy, it's actually quite traumatic for people, and a lot of the times it doesn't work. But if you put them in a virtual world or an augmented reality where there is a fake spider on their hand, part of their brain will register that as a real memory. And it will register it as a real memory, which has gone quite well and it's quite positive because actually the other part of your brain is thinking, well, I'm safe. So you can kind of retrain that brain to feel safe by having a spider in their hand. You can do the same with, people who are frightened of flying. You can get them to rehearse being on a plane, feeling like they're on a plane but feeling comfortable. Walking into a very busy room full of people, looking at people in the eye, and you can train yourself to do that and feel good about and comfortable about that. And as the applications for virtual reality are massive, it's one thing to ask a stressed out carer to lie down on the floor and imagine that she's on a beach, away from all her problems. It's one thing to do that, but it works so much better when she actually is there and she's looking around.
Yeah. And
all of the data is saying that kind of exposure works as well as putting her actually on the beach.
That is...
Your brain's like, this is amazing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And also on the other side of it, to put people in the shoes of others.
Yes.
I've seen some powerful VR applications where you're a refugee sitting in a plastic.
Well, we really want to do
raft
that for the neurodiversity training. It would be great to have people experience what it feels like to have autism and to get sensory overload from lights and sound, or to know what it feels like to have dyslexia and see words moving on the page and be asked to write an email, so it'd be lovely to try and submerge people into the minds of others as well, so they can get that experience, and that's hopefully on the cards too. Fingers crossed.
Really powerful, really interesting. Well, I could honestly sit here all day, Nannette, and talk to you. I know in the green room we had so many things we wanted to discuss, so I'll look forward to doing that. But just to kind of round up for listeners, this is our silly question that we ask everybody at the end of each podcast. If you had to name the Brain charity with a song title by the Beatles, what would it be and why?
Okay, so I'm going with Help, because it's a lovely, beautiful, simple word. And I think for a long time, the charity sector was a bit nervous about using that word because we didn't want to, feel like we were patronising anybody or anything like that. But it's really straightforward. It's really accessible, and we mean what we say and we do what it says on the tin and we help people, and that's why I'm going for that one. Yeah.
Brilliant. Love it. And just as a quick recap, if there was one key point from today that you want listeners to take away, what would it be?
I would say if you are the person in your family or in your class or in your place of work, if you are the quirky one, if you are the one that stands out, if you're the weirdo or the one that's a bit creative or, if that's you, that's a really good thing. And don't you worry about it. You'll get to the stage where you'll realise and understand that is massive and it's great. And, I know that the term superpower is bounded around a lot in the neurodivergent world at the moment. But, what that means is that you've got a gift and you should be very proud of that and go out and use it for good. That's what I would want to say. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Nannette. It's been a pleasure to have you on People of the Pool.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
If you want to find out more about some of the amazing things that are going on in Liverpool City region, go to www.tuesday-media.com/People of the Pool. People of the Pool is presented by me, Sophie Wilson. Until next time.